Welcome, everyone. My name is Wendy Yared, and I am the director of the Association of European Cancer Leads. ECL is a network of cancer societies from all over Europe, and we're an exclusive platform for leads who collaborate with their international peers, especially in the areas of cancer prevention, tobacco control, access to medicines, and patient support. I am very honored to present to you our session on empowering genitourinary cancer patients to become their own best advocates. Now, this session is a collaboration between the patient office of the European Association of Urology and its patient advocacy member organizations, namely the Association of European Cancer Leads, the International Kidney Cancer Coalition, and the World Bladder Cancer Patient Coalition. The EAU Patient Office and its patient advocacy member organizations aim at integrating the urological patient's perspective in everything the EAU does, which ultimately should lead to better patient care and patient outcomes. I would now like to introduce our first speaker, Chair of the International Kidney Cancer Coalition, Rachel Giles, who is going to talk about the results from a very interesting global kidney cancer patient survey that was conducted in 2020, mapping the kidney cancer patient experience worldwide. Rachel, please, the floor is all yours.
Thanks so much, Wendy. This is great to be here. What an honor. So I'm here today from the EAU. I was asked to tell a little bit about some of the work we're doing to generate data from the patient perspective that can be used actually in the guideline development in the EAU. So this is really the bread and butter of what the EAU does. It's a very important set of guidelines. They're used worldwide, not just limited to Europe. And we try and work with the professionals to come together and fill the gaps where there are gaps and identify unmet needs. And also, when there is no evidence of one treatment or another, it's really important to assess what the patient perspective might be, because that can actually direct and inform the choices made in the clinic together with the patients. And so as the International Kidney Cancer Coalition, we're a coalition of almost 50 organizations throughout the world, and we represent collectively 1.2 million kidney cancer patients. And it's a great honor for me that I'm invited to sit in the guideline panel, and we talk together with the professionals and try and figure out how we can help and supply data. Now, this whole process we refer to as evidence-based advocacy. This is an important concept in how patients can actually generate data to form evidence-based decisions that can affect their care. So to do that, and to that end, every 2 years, our organization, the International Kidney Cancer Coalition, the IKCC, we generate a survey that's worldwide, and we have 4,000 respondents in different countries, 43 countries. We translate it into 14 different languages, and we use that information, and we take information from the guidelines panel and translate it into questions. I mean, one example I can give is that's in our talk and our data, and I can invite you to see the full report, is that, for example, the recommendation from the guidelines panel is that biopsies are taken prior to the treatment decision that's made for patients. And yet, when we asked the patients if they'd actually had biopsies performed in those circumstances that are recommended by the EAU, only 46% of the patients had actually had that biopsy, meaning that there's a big gap in what the recommendations are and what's actually being performed. But when we thought, okay, well, maybe some patients don't want to be biopsied, I mean, that's a perfectly reasonable option. It turned out that only 3% of those over 2,000 patients that answered that question actually said no, they would not be willing to have a biopsy. So we can conclude that this is an actionable piece of evidence from the patient community that we can take back to the urologist and the guidelines committee and actually make an actionable change. There's lots of examples like that. This is very dense data. There's lots of information out there, and we can draw all sorts of conclusions with regard to how we can affect treatment options, but also very important are the psychosocial aspects of having kidney cancer. For example, 98% of patients diagnosed with kidney cancer report that they were affected in psychosocial aspects. That's not surprising. I mean, it's a cancer diagnosis. But what is surprising and is very actionable is that only 50% of them talk to anyone, their spouse, their family, their care team, anyone, any professional whatsoever, actually said anything about their concerns to another person. And that is a pity. Meaning that people aren't getting the best care they should be getting, and it means that the experience is impacted by that fact. So we're trying to make people talk about it. We're trying to create tools to enable those conversations and have people feel more comfortable in talking about the issues that they're experiencing. Maybe it's financial issues, maybe they're social issues, maybe it's their sexuality. These are all important topics to discover, and there's no taboo involved with that. So we're working a lot with that sort of level of evidence, and we're trying to feed that back into the EAU to improve the guidelines process and actually make the guidelines more useful for the patients at the same time. So thank you so much.
That's really great, Rachel. If I can ask you some questions.
Oh, please do.
This is a really insightful survey. How did you execute the survey? Did you go through your member organizations?
We
or
did.
Other
yeah.
organizations? How did you go about doing it?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So indeed, we distributed, it's an important bias to our research too that we admit and acknowledge, because you have to understand there's two major biases to our work. One is that we can't interview people that have passed away from the disease. So we have a survivor bias, and we try and work around that by involving caregivers of patients who have passed away. And that's up to 25% of our patients are responding that way. So we're trying to incorporate the deceased voice as well where possible. But the other one is indeed that we are working and we're distributing this through our patient affiliate organizations throughout the world, which means by almost definition, you have more engaged patients answering this survey. These are patients that are associated with the patient organization already. It's not entirely the case. For example, in India, we have nurses at clinics just helping patients that are coming in for their kidney cancer. So not all the patients are associated with kidney cancer organizations, but the majority of them are. So that's a great question and definitely a point to be acknowledged.
Oh, it's really great that you have that, you can provide that global perspective. Now, did they take care of the translations for the survey?
No, but they did check the translations. We work with a third-party independent organization that's professionals in surveys and in global surveys, and they do the initial translations, but we're always concerned they're going to make sort of insensitive translations that may not resonate with the local community. So we do send them to our affiliate organizations that are responsible in the end for distributing that, and they do read it. And they have found some doozies of mistakes, believe me. So it's a very important step in a quality assurance that we're able to make sure that those translations are accurate.
So this was a lot of work. What do you think is going to happen next?
Well, we do the survey. Yeah, that's a great question. We do the survey every 2 years, and that's important that cycle is continued, because ultimately we're trying to collect longitudinal data so that we can say that, look, to the panel or to anyone else, the public, we have shifted the needle, we've moved the needle, and now patients are experiencing something hopefully better. But it may not be. We may see a worsening of trends, and it's important to keep that current and observe the trends so that we can actually address it. We're not trying to put our head in a hole like an ostrich. We're trying to see what the patterns and analyze them in a scientific and rigorous manner.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for this important contribution to the community and for all our work here.
Thank you for letting me talk about this important topic.
Thank you. So next up, we have Louisa Fleur. Louisa is a prostate cancer specialist nurse at Giles Hospital in London. And Louisa, you're going to talk about the ADT educational program, which helps prostate cancer patients on hormone therapy and manage their side effects. Please go ahead, Louisa.
Thanks, Wendy, and thanks so much for the invitation to speak. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the ADT program. But first of all, I just want to introduce the founders of the program. So a Canadian group led by Richard Vassersug and Lauren Walker actually devised the group based on a lot of research. Richard is a scientist, but also a man with prostate cancer that's lived on hormone therapy for many years. So he's got an amazing insight into it, and his work has been invaluable. So the group started 12 years ago doing research into the experience of men on ADT, particularly looking at kind of couple relationships, quality of life, how to manage side effects. And some of the research highlights were issues such as men and their partners and loved ones really not understanding about the side effects of androgen deprivation therapy, being ill-equipped to deal with them, and also health professionals not always being clear about what side effects should be talked about or even how to manage them as well. And they certainly found that couples who were better supported with education tended to remain more intimate as well. So they used all this amazing research and work to draw together some guidelines on how to improve patient and partner quality of life on androgen deprivation therapy. And these guidelines were then in turn used to develop the ADT education programme. So the programme itself has been running since I think 2013 in Canada. It's evidence-based, which is really important, and it's a trifold programme. So we've got the ADT book, which is a fantastic resource. It's a really weighty book, but rather than just being full of kind of facts and figures, it's divided into chapters which are almost workbooks in themselves. Everything's based on behaviour change theory. So a lot of it is around goal setting. It's about people really taking control of their own health in life and really using this resource to make real positive changes. So you've got the book, you've got a website called lifeonadt.com, and then there's also a 1.5 hour education class which can be delivered either face-to-face or online. For obvious reasons, recently that's been online. And it's really about enhancing quality of life, and that's absolutely the bottom line of what we want to do. And very deliberately, it's also a group experience. And the idea behind that is obviously around peer support. There's nothing more powerful than learning from people going through the same thing as yourself. And it also normalises experience as well, to know that other people are going through the same sort of things. So where do we come in? So we were really keen to see whether this is something we could offer men in Europe as well. So the European Association of Urology have worked really closely to bring this project to Europe, and we've done it via pilot scheme. So we've set up the pilot sites in the UK, involved training specialist nurses to deliver the classes, and also we've translated the book into a sort of European edition to make sure that it's relevant for men being treated in Europe. So we've got 4 centres in the UK that are delivering these workshops. The first one went live in December of last year, and the others came on board a bit later. And you can see in this table, we've run a total of 15 classes. We've had 99 men register and around 71 actually come. And when I say men, their loved ones, partners, etc., are very positively invited to come along as well. So obviously we really wanted to know whether this was something that was useful, met the objectives. So we've done some evaluation. So we sent a pre-course survey, and we particularly asked men, what are you and also what are your loved ones most concerned about in terms of side effects? So you can see I've just put these into a graph. I think there's some really interesting things here. So the first thing that sort of stands out to me is the things that men and their partners or loved ones were most concerned about were the obvious things you can see and feel. So hot flushes, sexual side effects, fatigue, weight gain. And that's really important because it's what's concerning people. But what I found really, really interesting, Wendy, was that if you look at the low mood and irritability and mood changes and frustration, that was much more concerning for partners rather than men themselves. And then if you look at things like bone health, cardiovascular health, that wasn't a concern pre-course, whereas professionals, that is our top concern. So you can already see a little bit of a mismatch of what we feel is important and what men are actually coming to the classes concerned with. So after the course, we also asked, what did you find most helpful? And interestingly, what came out loud and clear was about managing side effects, but it was also very much about meeting other men and meeting other people with the same experiences, which was really good to see. But we also asked about what was least helpful, and actually most people said nothing. Most people said there was something in there that was important for them. But I think I said at the beginning, an absolute core part of this course is around goal setting. So we actually get people to start doing that in the course. We get them to think about their values, think about what's important to them, think about a concern, and then actually make an action plan there and then to see what health behaviour changes might be important to them. We have a massive focus on exercise because it's so important for men on ADT. So when we asked them, did you set a goal, we were really interested because it was things like losing weight, maybe something around relationships, etc. But actually, when we looked, I think almost half of them actually mentioned exercise as a goal. And if we go back to the concerns, weight gain or certainly metabolic effects like diabetes, heart disease, bone health, etc. weren't a concern before, and yet the goals they choose were around exercise. So to me, that really gives me a lot of confidence that this course is not only meeting the kind of informational needs, etc., but it's also going to be really impactful in terms of long-term health as well. So this is the information, and I guess anyone that's watching, if you're interested, please go to the website. We would love you to get involved. If you feel like registering for a course, we're open, so you can certainly look at the European classes, and if it's something you feel that you or your loved ones would find useful if you're on androgen deprivation therapy, then I really hope you can come along and join us. So thanks very much, Wendy.
Thank you so much, Louisa. This is really an amazing program. I have two questions for you. Now, hormone therapy is used in a variety of circumstances. Which groups of men have you found to benefit most from this program? Now, you mentioned, men who are sedentary and maybe wanting to lose weight, but, can you maybe give us an example of some specific groups?
Sure, that's a really good question, actually. I think if you look at the sort of pure aims of the course, it's very much pitched for men just starting hormone therapy. And I think that's great. And a lot of the feedback we got was about, this is really great, it needs to happen at the beginning, because it's about preempting issues and it's about making those really positive health changes before anything actually happens in terms of side effects. But in practice, although it's been great for men just starting on hormone therapy, we've had lots of men that have been on hormone therapy for a long time that are struggling with side effects that have joined, and they've got an awful lot of information from that. I've also had patients join that have been through previous iterations of education and have still found something new. And I think this approach, the motivational interview and the goal setting, etc., is so different to what we normally do, which is here's some education, go away and do what you will with it. This is really practical. This is about what we're going to do, how can we support you to make this change. We've had some really interesting feedback. So I've had some, for example, I had an email from a man that had seen the course and was worried that because he was a gay man that maybe that it would be too heteronormative, it would be not something that would be right for him. And I was able to reassure him, absolutely not. It really doesn't matter if you're single, if you're in a relationship, if you're gay, if you're straight, if you're bisexual. It's for anyone that is on hormone therapy, and hopefully the way we deliver it is very inclusive. So without wishing to sort of be too over optimistic about it, I think it's kind of for everyone. I think there's something in it. If you go there with a reason, then you're going to find something good out of it.
That's really amazing, Louisa. And then I just have one other question for you, because this is really an innovative way of delivery, but it also seems to be quite a bit of work. How has it been for you as a nurse and your team?
That's a great question, and it was definitely one of the barriers to certain sites joining us as part of the pilot, and a few sites had to drop out because of staffing problems and COVID. Actually, it's the converse. All these men have got issues, and as the specialist nurses, it's our job to support them. And for me, it's amazing to have this hour a month where I can signpost people and say, come to this. We can be really practical, we can be hands-on, we can actually introduce you to other men going through the same thing. So for me, it's great. It's an hour of my month. It's really great. I can see anything from kind of 4 to 12 men. We like to keep the groups fairly small so there's good dialogue going. But it's actually, once you get through the training and once you get your confidence up, it's a really time-effective way of doing it. And most important, it absolutely is what we're here for. It ticks every box in terms of support, self-efficacy, self-management, education, and it's a great way to do it.
That's great, Louisa. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Now, I would like to introduce our final speaker, the Executive Director of the World Bladder Cancer Patient Coalition, Alex Filichevas. Alex, you're going to talk about the important role that bladder cancer groups across the globe have to play in improving the situation for patients and their families. So we're looking forward to hearing your talk.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for this kind introduction, and the colleagues as well for sharing your insights. It was really interesting to hear about your project. So the World Bladder Cancer Patient Coalition is an international umbrella organization uniting bladder cancer patient organizations and groups around the world. And it was founded in 2019, really seeing that there were many different voices and organizations speaking on behalf of the patients in their communities. And we really needed to start talking with one global voice on behalf of our bladder cancer patient community, in order to ensure that we can drive that change together. And so lack of patient support information, patient-led support and patient-led information resources was really the challenge that many of our organizations faced, and the level of these organizations around the world in terms of their strength and ability and resources really varies from country to country. And some of them are able to participate in a greater way in awareness raising activities and advocacy as well. And so we are there to support them in whatever stage of their bladder cancer patient advocacy journey they are on. And one of the ways how we do that, we launched the Startup Guide for Bladder Cancer Patient Groups for the first time in 2020 when it was in English. As a practical resource for patient advocates, for caregivers, for anyone really who is looking to start a bladder cancer patient support network or a group in their community, whether it's locally or maybe a bit broader at the national level, and support them on that journey, sort of as the starting point of ideas and examples where to start from. And we started off in English, and now this resource is really available in Arabic, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Turkish as well. And so we've really wanted to broaden and increase the accessibility of this resource. So patient advocates who may not be well versed in English, maybe to reach out to us at the first instance, have a resource already that they can turn to and use in their community. And we really stress the important role that patient organizations play, and we encourage as well urologists in particular, all healthcare professionals facing patients, but also patients themselves, their families and their loved ones, to see the value of strengthening the patient voice within their community so they can work and support each other as well as drive change and have that positive impact for patient communities in their countries. And as well, when these organizations do grow, and we are there to support them every step of the way, there is an opportunity to get involved in a much broader way, for example, advocating for access to treatments and better improvement of care, raising awareness, which we do every May for Bladder Cancer Awareness Month, and also providing peer support. And I think Louisa mentioned the importance of that ability to speak to somebody who's been through the same journey as you and have that relatability and support that you may have. And so the Startup Guide itself, it's very practical tool for patient advocates or anyone really looking at different areas how you could start a patient group, what are the things to think about, whom you should reach out to, and the very different ways how you could start this, because it can really start as a WhatsApp group or a small patient support network maybe in the hospital setting, and grow into something much bigger that some of the national level sort of organization exist. And in this Startup Guide we have some examples, and we have many examples of success. We have 12 organizations at the moment in 9 countries who have varying degree of experience in years and the sort of the breadth of activities that they undertake, all very different. And so there's many learnings and success stories to take away from that. And some of these case studies I just would like to briefly mention as well. In Australia, for example, our member organization is in Australia, bladdercancer.org.au. They were really founded from the need for greater bladder cancer patient information. And one of the founding members of the organization really saw that there was no information coming directly from Australia and sort of Australian experiences that you could relate to, and he had to search for that abroad. And that was an inspiration for the establishment of the organization, which then they really worked on developing a patient guidebook which covers all bladder cancer patient journey, specifically relevant to Australia. Our member organization in the UK, for example, Fight Bladder Cancer, they do fantastic work in providing resources and information, but one of the biggest tools that they use is an online forum for patients on Facebook, where they can go and talk to patients like themselves or caregivers as well, and also support community from fight bladder cancer are there to answer their questions and concerns in confidentiality as well. And lastly, we had a more recent success story as well from India, where this tool sort of led to the establishment, or the starting work towards the establishment of bladder cancer patient organization in India. And so starting a patient group, it is a very it's not an easy process. It's quite complex, and I think when you're just starting out alone, as opposed to as a patient or a caregiver, there's many things to consider, and this is something that we really want to address and instill confidence in our patients and advocates, and helping them in that first step in the various languages that we do have this resource available right now. We are a coalition of organizations as well, so there is a lot to draw from these experiences, and I think that is a wonderful resource in addition to the startup guide, where we can guide and support our patient advocates around the world in this journey to creating an organization and engaging with different stakeholders, urologists and experts around the world. And in conclusion as well, I would like to just summarize that many of our member organizations have referred to the Startup Guide as a tool that they would have loved to have when they were starting out their organization, and it really draws from practical examples and sort of the lack of information that they had at the time when they were starting out, and addresses these with really simple practical solutions. But of course, we are here to guide them in answer any questions too. So anyone watching today and thinking that maybe I would like to start, or we do need more bladder cancer patient support and patient-led information in my community, in my country, please do check out our Startup Guide for Bladder Cancer Patient Groups, and of course do get in touch with the World Bladder Cancer Patient Coalition, and we would be happy to have a chat with you about this.
Thanks so much, Alex. You know what, you're a rather young organization because you were established in 2019, but you sure have done a lot. So how are bladder cancer patient groups made aware this guide exists? Because you already mentioned some good examples on how they're using it, but how did they find out that this guide exists? How did you disseminate it? What was the process you had?
So that's a very good question, Wendy, and thank you for highlighting. We are a young organization, and we've spent a lot of our kind of growing years during the pandemic, which presented its own challenges as well. So a lot of the activities have really taken place online. We're using all the resources and the platforms that we have available at our disposal. But we've really spent a lot of time nurturing and building relationships with different stakeholders, for example, urologist communities, urology nurses around the world, and trying to use them, I suppose, as a resource to then reach patients and patient advocates. But we absolutely understand that the healthcare professional community is also an important resource and an important advocates as well to work with us and to make that change. Now that we are back somewhat to live events and congresses, we had an opportunity now to really distribute these in person and have them presented to the medical communities, because they are the ones who have the broadest sort of reach to patients in the countries where we have no representation in our current patient advocacy groups. So I'm hoping to see much more of that now in person and sharing these tools. And of course, anyone interested can download it or request a printed copy from us, and we will be sending. We'll be happy to share that.
That's great. Alex, what has been the response so far? Online, you also said that you've been able to meet people. So I know that's a lot of it positive. Had you have any maybe negative responses or maybe some tips on improvement?
That's also a great question, Wendy. Overall, first feedback came from our membership, really, and as I've mentioned just before, the great resource that they wish they had, and they all contributed to the development of it. So it's really patient voices represented from a perspective of patient advocates themselves, from their experiences. And this is a resource that we would like to be a living one and build on the success stories that come from the startup guide itself. But if you were asking about some criticisms, one was about really making sure it's accessible to as many people as possible. And this is why we've invested so much in translations and working with stakeholders in dissemination in many countries. And the choice of languages we have selected as well, which is Spanish, French, Portuguese, Arabic, and Turkish, was really about being able to reach a broader, a bigger number of people in the countries that speak these languages and making sure that they have access to this resource.
And then maybe just one last question. Did you get any feedback on how they've been using the guide in a clinical setting maybe, or in the organizations, or how have they been using this guide?
So we have, as I mentioned, one of the great success stories is bladder cancer India. That is our most advanced sort of development that we have seen from our patient community, and we're hoping that this will materialize with our support together, bringing stakeholders together in a more comprehensive way as they grow, and we are there to support them. And that is one of the kind of biggest examples that we currently have. Some of the other organizations, also, I would say patient advocates around the world, have used this as an inspiration how to get together and how to get started, right? When you are an individual patient facing bladder cancer and wanting to meet other patients or start something as a patient group support network locally, they use that as an inspiration and practical tools, sort of like what would be the first steps for them to take. And it's a great connection to World Bladder Cancer Patient Coalition. They use that as a sort of first step on figuring out what could be the way for them to get started, and then they turn to us for further guidance.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Alex. So with that, I want to thank our speakers, our excellent speakers, Rachel, Louisa, Alex, for your amazing enthusiasm and dedication to your work, and to our viewers for tuning in. So this has been the session on empowering genital urinary cancer patients to become their own best advocates. Thank you, everyone.